The reality is it's not conspiracy. What brings this group its power is that very often these very different, very diverse people find that their interests align. And when the interests of the most powerful align about taxes, or about regulation, or about politics, or about global warming, they have, wait for it, more power than the least powerful people, right? And there is a multiplication that comes from the networks that connect them together. And so this is an extremely important component of their power. Another important component of their power has to do with the byproduct of the networks. I go to Davos every year, or I used to go to Davos every year. After writing this book, I don't know if I'll be invited back to Davos because, I told some of the secrets of Davos, which don't, by the way, involve people going into a back room and planning, France's GDP is going to go up and hemlines are going to go down. There's not that kind of planning in Davos. In fact, Davos is a little bit like this. It's a kind of a big bloviation festival where people go into rooms to try and find something, interesting out. In fact, and very seldom do, by the way. I was talking to Steve Case, the founder of AOL, and he said, one of the problems with Davos is I always feel like I'm in the wrong place. That the real action is in some other room or some other hotel or some other quarter someplace. But when I come back, people say, well, what was the punchline? What came out of this? And ultimately, the conclusion that I reached was that Davos is the factory where global conventional wisdom is manufactured. That's the real power of an event like that. That you can get a couple thousand really important government business leaders together and have them talk through global warming or Iraq or some other issue, and have them sort of stick their finger in the air and say, well, he's a CEO and she's a CEO. Well, it's a woman, so she's probably not a CEO, but he's a CEO. And they feel this way, so I'm kind of comfortable with that. And then they go back to their countries and their companies, and they have disproportionate influence, and they control means of influence. And that view becomes a more predominant view. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, that's not the same thing as running the world in secret cabals, and you're absolutely right, because the world's not run in secret cabals. What it is about is the real nature of power. And the problem with the real nature of power is that it's skewed, it's disproportionate, and the tools that we have historically used to balance it out, tools of governance, tools in which the consent of the governed is the criteria by which we grant legitimacy to such an enterprise, don't exist on the global stage anymore. And that's the real innovation challenge for our time. That's a much harder problem than solving cancer or global warming.